Perfect.
Very good. Do you also see the pointer?
Yes, I can see it.
Very good.
Uh, okay, I will just, Nicholas has said that if we can give an introduction to the 8th birthday event meanwhile, so I will just start. Welcome everyone. Today is the second webinar session, which is organized by Wikidata Wiki Project India on the occasion of Wikidata's 8th birthday. I hope some of you have already attended the first session on Sum of All Paintings last week, which was conducted by Jenny. So on Wikidata's 8th birthday, we have planned to arrange for a series of events in the form of webinars, datathon, and merchandise distribution. I will share all the links in the Etherpad. I will also share the link of the Etherpad in the Google Meet chat. So today we are extremely honored to have Denny with us. We'll speak about the newest sister project of the Wikiverse, the Abstract Wikipedia. It's very early morning where Denny lives right now. So thank you very much, Denny, to accept our invitation to speak in Indian time zone friendly session. Those who don't know Denny, I have everyone in the movement. Almost everyone knows about Denny, but those who don't know or new to the movement. So back in 2005, Denny presented the idea of including structured data in Wikipedia, and later created the semantic MediaWiki extension. And in 2010, he wrote the proposal for Wikidata, and later led a team in Wikimedia Deutschland to develop Wikidata. So since then, Wikidata has come a long way, and now Denny is back with even more exciting and ambitious idea, the Abstract Wikipedia and Wiki Lambda. So just a reminder, like all Wikimedia online and offline spaces, this session will follow Wikimedia friendly space policy. The link of the policy is shared in the Etherpad link, Etherpad. And regarding questions and comments, please use Etherpad or the Google Meet chat. I will compile them together on Etherpad for Denny when he will be ready to answer them. I will not waste much time and let Denny speak about what these projects are all about and how we need to get prepared when the projects finally arrive. So over to you, Denny.
Thank you very much for the introduction. That was very nice. Maybe blush a lot. Thanks everyone for being here and for attending the talk. I'm very honored to have been invited and very happy to be here. So I want to talk about Abstract Wikipedia, which is a new project that the Wikimedia Foundation has taken on, and where we will develop a number of components in the next 2, 3, 4 years, something like that, that might be helpful, particularly for Wikipedias with smaller communities, but also outside of that in many different ways. So as you know, the mission of the Wikimedia Foundation is to imagine a world where everyone can share in the sum of all knowledge. How are we doing with that today? So today Wikipedia has more than 300 languages and more than 54 million articles in those languages. So it sounds like, wow, pretty good, right? But the thing is, as we all know, it's very unevenly distributed. English is more than 6 million articles, and a language like Santali, which is 7 million speakers, has only 4,600 articles. So we have this big discrepancy in article numbers between different languages. But that's also not the whole story. Between the articles it's just the number of articles. It's also how much content is covered in each of the articles, or which topics are covered by the articles. So even English, which has more than 6 million articles, as I already said, and you compare it with German. German has 2.5 million articles, less than half. And yet, about half of the articles in the German Wikipedia are not even represented in the English Wikipedia. More than 1 million articles in the German Wikipedia about topics that don't have an article in the English Wikipedia. And that goes on. Even Santali has more than 800 articles which are not covered by the English Wikipedia. This is about 20% of the Santali Wikipedia. It's in the other Indic languages, even the numbers are much bigger. Marathi has more than 25,000 articles which are not represented in the English Wikipedia. Western Punjabi, more than 14,000. Punjabi, more than 12,000 articles. In fact, of the 20 million topics that have Wikipedia articles, English Wikipedia, which is by far the largest, only covers about a third of them. So most of the topics that we have Wikipedia articles about are not even available to an English speaker, never mind to any other speakers. So most of the knowledge that we have in Wikipedia is not available to most of our readers. The core issue is that the cost of Wikipedia is fundamentally the number of topics times the number of languages. And if you just take the current numbers, it's about 20 million topics across the 300 languages, which is a really big number. The question is, can we turn this multiplication into an addition? Is it possible that we create an infrastructure, that you create a system where the cost of Wikipedia, where we separate the cost of creating the topics and creating the languages, and therefore reduce the cost by more than 2 orders of magnitude? And the answer is, I think we can. So this is the Urdu Wikipedia article for Marie Curie. And what you already see here is that a lot of the things that you see in the Urdu article are coming from Wikidata. So we have the information in the info box, which is coming from Wikidata, the site links, the authority data, which is being sourced from Wikidata. So if you take, for example, at the info box and scroll down further in it, you see information like this here, where we speak about the doctoral advisor of Marie Curie, Gabriel Lippmann. So all this data is not in the local Wikipedia. It's not in the Urdu Wikipedia, actually. They have the Urdu text, they have the reference and so on, but all these other things are actually coming from Wikidata. What is Wikidata? I don't have to introduce this in this round, obviously, as we are celebrating Wikidata's 8th birthday. It's an open knowledge graph that powers Wikipedia and many applications beyond that. It was launched in 2012, as was said in the introduction, provides structured linked data, persistent identifiers, secure identifiers, and is fully multilingual. So if you, for example, go to Wikidata and see what it has about Marie Curie, it looks like this. And then we can scroll down. We will find the doctoral advisor saying Gabriel Lippmann here. This is exactly the information that the Urdu Wikipedia has been displaying in its info box. Now, as I said, it's completely multilingual, so it's not just that you can see the whole thing in English. You can actually just switch the language and see it in Bengali and edit it in Bengali, for example. You can read all of it. Or here in Assamese, sorry, here in Assamese, in Hindi, in German, in Hebrew, in I think this is Arabic. So we have, in fact, we have more than 427 languages that Wikidata supports for the user interface. And in all of those languages, unlike the Wikipedias, where every article is written independently in each of the languages, Wikidata shows always the same knowledge graph, no matter what language you are looking for it, which also means that someone editing Wikidata in Assamese is editing directly the knowledge graph, which is being displayed in the Urdu Wikipedia, therefore updating the information in the Urdu Wikipedia immediately. So we're really working on a single knowledge graph through the lens of all these languages. So, and one more thing that Wikidata has is, as you've seen, the authority data. So if you scroll down on Marie Curie's page, you'll find this list of identifiers. This is a pretty long list of identifiers for Marie Curie in different other authority files, canonical sources. And in fact, it turns Wikidata into something like a modern Rosetta Stone. But you don't only have 3 different languages that refer to, and then that help you to figure out how those map to each other. But in fact, we have been linking to more than 5,400 catalogs where you can find more information about Marie Curie, where you can figure out what are the identifiers that those catalogs are using for Marie Curie, and where you can merge the information that is available in IMDb with the information that is available in OpenStreetMaps, with the information that is available in many national libraries, in many museums, in other memory institutions. We're linking to many of those catalogs, putting together a huge set of data that it makes it you can access from a single starting point. Wikidata has recently crossed 90 million items, making it much larger in the number of item count than the Wikipedias. And there are more than 1.1 billion statements describing those items. Statements like, for example, the doctoral advisor of Marie Curie is Gabriel Lippmann, and similar things like this. The number I'm most proud of is that we have more than 24,000 contributors that are monthly active, making it one of the most active Wikimedia projects. And they have contributed so far almost 1.3 billion edits. In fact, Wikidata is the very first wiki ever to have more than 1 billion edits. And it reached a number faster than the English Wikipedia, even though it's only like half as old, a third as old, something in between, as than the English Wikipedia. One number that surprised me a lot is that there are more than 15 million Sparkle queries every day. What are Sparkle queries? So all the data in Wikidata is taken and uploaded to a Dribble store, to a Sparkle store that you can query. And the beautiful thing about a Sparkle endpoint is not only that you can query it and get information out about Wikidata, but you can immediately visualize the information, the result, in very attractive ways. So here are a few examples of Sparkle queries where not a single line of code had to be written. It's just the query itself and produces those beautiful results, which is amazing. So here, for example, we're asking for paintings by Vermeer by location. So we see all the different places where there are Vermeer paintings. If you click on them, you get a painting, and you can scroll the map. It's completely interactive. It's pretty amazing. This one shows you the etymology of the word water. So you have the English word water, the German word Wasser, and so on, in different languages, and how are they etymologically linked. This gives you another interesting point about Wikidata. In two years ago, 2018, Wikidata was extended to not only have information about things, not only to be an ontological knowledge base, but also to contain lexicographical data, to contain data about words and how they are related to each other, what forms these words have, and so on. This will be important in a little bit later. A very interesting query is the following one. It shows you the ATMs in Munich belonging to the interbank banking network. Now, Wikidata doesn't have, even though it has 90 million entities, it doesn't have a complete list of all ATMs. But OpenStreetMaps has. And OpenStreetMaps is also exposing its information in the form of a Sparkle endpoint. What you can do in the Sparkle endpoint of Wikidata is to have a federated query where you ask, for example, well, which banks belong to the interbank banking network? And then you can go to OpenStreetMaps and ask, show me all the ATM, where are the locations of all these ATMs that are belonging to the query result coming from Wikidata. Mash this together, get a list of those geo-coordinates and the associated banks, and then render it on top of OpenStreetMaps and display it in as a query results in the Wikidata query service. And all of these, without writing a single line of code, it's just a Sparkle query. It's a pretty complicated Sparkle query though, but it's just a Sparkle query, and you get this very powerful mashup of two different SPARQL inputs, of two different open data sources, running live in your browser based on your query and giving you this result. Or here, using the data that we have seen earlier about Marie Curie and her doctoral advisor, Gabriel Littmann, you can actually create an interactive academic genealogy of Marie Curie and see who advised her advisor, how does this go back in time, and what is the genealogy of the advisor of Marie Curie. And this again is completely interactive in the browser. You can scroll through it, you can zoom in, you can click on each of them, get more information, and so on. This is based on the very same information that the Urdu Wikipedia has been used to display it in the info box of its Wikipedia article for Marie Curie. So what Wikidata really did, it did reduce the cost of Wikipedia to the number of topics plus the number of languages for certain pieces of the knowledge space. So the information that we have in Wikidata is maintained only once, but displayed in dozens of different languages. It's not only the Urdu Wikipedia, which displays it in its info box. It's also Greek, Romanian, Slovenian, Belarusian, Czech, Azeri, even Hanoitish Polish uses the data uses some data from Wikidata to display there. So there are dozens of languages using the data from Wikidata and to enrich their Wikipedia articles to improve the data they have compared to what they had previously. And there's this amazing work going on, for example, with the Wiki Project India and the COVID-19 task force that you have created, and where we have, for example, the article about the COVID cases in Kerala. Here we see it in Canada, and the table in this article is actually populated by queries going to Wikidata, and the same data is then being displayed also in Bengali, in Punjabi, in Malayalam, and also in English. So the information is maintained only once in a single place, but available throughout the different languages. So you don't have to go into the table syntax, updated numbers every day. You can just do it in Wikidata, and the local Wikipedias will just pull the data from Wikidata and display it. And this has gone well beyond what I would have expected you can do with Wikidata, and pushing all these numbers into Wikidata and maintaining them there. It's really, really amazing what you did here. Thank you so much for that. So, is the solution just to, bring everything from Wikipedia to Wikidata and we're done? Well, in practice, it doesn't really work. Wikidata has a few numbers of issues. So the expressivity of Wikidata is just not strong enough to express things like narration, to express things like reference by description, meaning that we can only refer to things that we have a QID for. And even though there are 90 million of them, there's so many more things that we are referring to in Wikipedia articles all the time. And there's no chance that we will have QID for all of them. We have to rely on this mechanism to refer to things by description. We have also to work much more with redundancy. And I could go in each of these into much detail, but in the interest of time, I will not. I will focus on redundancy. So this is the English Wikipedia article about Marie Curie. And the thing is, basically, every substantial article about Marie Curie in all of the languages that has an article, in which is more than 150 languages that have an article about Marie Curie, there's one specific fact which is being expressed in the lead of the article in all of these languages. So it doesn't matter if it's English, Polish, Ukrainian, Chinese, Urdu, Santali, Arabic. All of them have this one specific fact in them. In Arabic, here in Russian, Spanish, Italian, German, Chinese, Korean. In Korean, it's like half of the lead besides the way how to pronounce it. And if you still don't understand what this fact is, because you don't speak any of the language that you see here. Well, that's how people feel if you don't speak English and go to the web, because a lot of the web content is in English and they just don't understand it. So the fact that I'm talking about is the following. Marie Curie is the only person to win the Nobel Prize in 2 different scientific fields. And that is a fact that Wikidata can't explicitly represent. You can have it implicitly. So you can make a query that asks, who are the people who won a Nobel Prize in 2 different scientific fields? And you will get back the answer, oh, it's Marie Curie. But the fact that she's the only one, and to explicitly state that, that's not possible in Wikidata. We have no way to do that. So let's take a sentence. Marie Curie is the only person to receive the Nobel Prize in 2 different scientific categories, and think, how else could we represent a sentence? And the following section is a lot of hand-waving and work in progress and so on. We'll get to a lot of the details later, and I'm also simplifying massively throughout it. But just bear with me to get the idea. So if you take a sentence like this, and basically the idea is that we break down an article into a series of sentences which are in a specific order. So if you take the sentence and try to capture it, we could say, for example, there's a frame that has the meaning of only person that, and we're talking about a person, Marie Curie, identified by a QID, and the condition that she's the only person that is, it's about award winning, and the award is a Nobel Prize, and the type of the Nobel Prize are, well, it's a bit complicated. Let's take a noun phrase with modifiers. There's a determiner too, the modifiers are different and scientific, and the head is category. Now, the idea is that this somehow captures the content of the sentence on the right-hand side in some abstract way. And it doesn't really matter if the sentence on the right-hand side is exactly like this, or it says the only one who ever won Nobel Prizes in different sciences was Marie Curie. That's not so important. What is important is they can take this abstract representation and turn it into different languages. Here, for example, in Croatian. So I can use this abstract representation to create sentences in many, many different languages. So this is the core idea. To build this kind of content, I need a set of constructors. As we have seen, we have the only person that constructor that had 2 slots of 2 different types, a person and a verb phrase. We have and produces a clause. Then award winning is one constructor that creates a verb phrase, so it can be plugged into the conditions, has different slots with the types again, and so on and so on. So we can build all these constructors out and use them to then construct the content. And what we then need are those renderers. 1 per constructor, 1 per language. So for each constructor, we need to, for each constructor language pair, we need a renderer to then take this content and turn it into language. So for example, say here we need to render the person, then add is the only person, and then the condition, and render that. And those would be for each of the different languages that we support. And then we can create, with the constructor building the content, natural language text, which can be used in earlier places. So the architecture basically would look like that. We have one place where we store the abstract content created from those constructors. And the current idea is to use Wikidata for that, but we have to discuss this with the Wikidata community, whether they're actually fine with that. This will happen some point next year. Then we have the Wiki of Functions, which is a new project that we're currently planning, where we have all these renderers, and those create the natural language texts, which the Wikipedias may or may not use. So they can say, I want this text displayed here inside the article or not. I mean, it's really up to the Wikipedias if they want to have this text. So as you can see, we have all those functions would be the renderers translating it over. And we would have one for the different languages. So in that way, we have like Wikidata and the Wiki of Function as the basic. We have the constructors as a single set of them being in the Wiki of Functions. We have 1 abstract content per topic. And then we have 1 set of renderers per language, 1 for each constructor. So we would have the renderers for English, for Santali, for Hindi, is stored somewhere. And they would then take the abstract content, create text, which then can be used by the articles. And this is really the architecture that allows us to reduce the cost of Wikipedia to the number of topics plus the number of languages, which is the main goal of here, and will go well beyond what Wikidata can already express. And we are already halfway there, actually. So the architecture of the whole system is right now that the Wikipedias can access the items and Wikidata, can access the lexicographical knowledge in Wikidata. So those parts are already there. What we're still missing is to actually store the content in Wikidata next to the items, and to have this new project, the Wikio functions, where we have the renderers, where we store the constructors, and then we can build the whole system out. So this is what we are building on right now in order to support this whole idea of an abstract Wikipedia, of having abstract content that can be displayed in many different languages, that is updated in single place. The desiderata, the things we wish for with the system, is that the content obviously has to be easy to contribute in any language. Again, just like with Wikidata, we want to make sure that you can go in and edit it in Santali, edit it in Hindi, edit it in Bengali, and it will be editing on the very same content and be made available to all the languages immediately. The set of constructors, this is something I disagree with a lot of research in the field. I think that it must be maintained by the community. The community has to decide what are the available constructors. They have to build them out. What are the slots and so on. This is not something that a small team can do to decide for all the constructors to represent all the meanings that are relevant for the Wikipedias. The renderers must be maintained by the communities. We will have support for, I hope, 300 languages and more. There's no way that a small development team can create all those renderers for all those constructors. They have to be completely crowdsourced to the community and be maintained by the community. The system must be understandable and edited in a predictable way. So it must be possible when you see an error that you can find, if you know the system well enough, that you can find with 1 or 2 clicks the place where this error was created and be able to fix it. This is a major feature of the Wikimedia projects, that whenever you see something, you can go and fix it. This has to be remained even with this complex project. It won't be as easy as with Wikipedia, obviously, but we have to make it as simple as possible, because this is the main way to gather more contributors. And finally, the system has to support graceful degradation, meaning if we're just missing, the grammatical form of a specific verb, we shouldn't drop the whole article. We should just drop the part that we really can't render and still contain the rest, so that we still have some content to display. Because it will always be the case that the renderers, the lexicographical knowledge and so on, will not be equally distributed across languages. So the whole thing is a bit crazy, as you could probably tell by now. There are also a few reasons for optimism. First, well, we're only attacking a single genre, encyclopedic text. We're not talking about prose, we're not talking about lyrics, we're not talking about manifestos that have to stir up your soul and make you fight against the system. We're talking about encyclopedic text, which is, by its nature, often not the most exciting text. It doesn't have to be, beautifully written. What is more important is that the information that it transfers is correct. We also don't need to actually parse and understand language, which is much, much harder. We just have to generate it. And generating knowledge is much easier than parsing and understanding it. So this is a big advantage of the system. And we can start very simple and for very low baseline. We have more than 100 languages, so we don't even have an article about Marie Curie. So, it's not that the baseline is particularly high in those languages. So we can start with, working on those areas. Our goal is not to replace the article about the British Empire in the English Wikipedia. The goal is, or the article about the history of India in the Hindi Wikipedia. This is not what we're aiming for, right? What we're aiming for are those are those huge gaps in knowledge across the many different languages. And the local Wikipedias will still remain the ability to always override this for everything that they are particularly interested in. So the baseline is very low. The incentive infrastructure is also super promising. So something that I have seen with myself, speaking Croatian, German, English, is that in my early years at Wikipedia, I was always wondering, how do I spend my time best? Do I work on the Croatian Wikipedia? Do I work on the English Wikipedia? And the calculation was always like, on the English Wikipedia, you have much more visibility for your knowledge. On your Croatian Wikipedia, you have many fewer readers. And also the Croatian Wikipedia community was so small. Will they ever even achieve the goal of having a comprehensive Wikipedia? The English Wikipedia community was much more active, so would I rather support there? Here with the Abstract Wikipedia, we provide you with an alternative where you can actually create the content you really care about the topics you really want to talk about, and make it available in all the languages. You can write about the history of your city, of your village. You can write about local dishes, local cultural events and songs and dances, and make them available to the English Wikipedia, to the Japanese Wikipedia, to all the Indic languages at once, which changes the infrastructure massively. And in the end, this leads to this very, very attractive goal of imagining a world where everyone can share in the sum of all knowledge. No matter what language they speak, they can share together in the same knowledge and make it available for everyone. So, what are our next steps? How do we want to get there? So we had these constructors, these renderers, the content. And if you squint a little bit and generalize it a little bit, you actually realize that constructors are the same as, or actually a specialization of types in programming languages. Renderers are like functions in programming languages, and content are just like values of the types in programming languages. So we can take this set of things like constructors, renderers, and content and turn it into something that many, many more people are actually familiar with. Types, functions, values. And if we do it like this, we expand the scope of this new project that we're working on considerably, of this wiki of functions. The name is to be decided. In fact, we just finished this week the first round of the naming contests for the wiki of functions, and the result was that we have now 6 candidates that will go into a first preliminary legal review, and then we'll go to final second voting round, which will start October 27 and go to November 7. You're all invited then to give your preferences about these 6 candidates that have been proposed by the community and which are currently being discussed as the name for the wiki of functions. So you'll be, we'll send out emails when we get closer to the voting dates, and then legal has checked off if all of those names are okay. So, but what is this wiki of functions? What are we working on here? So, the wiki for functions, as well, a wiki for functions, obviously, which will be launching next year if everything goes well, and it will be entirely multilingual, just like Wikidata is in terms of natural language, but also multilingual in terms of programming languages. And we'll get to both of those in a moment. So, what is a function? The view that we take here is that, a function takes some input and generate some output in a predictable, deterministic way. A function is like a recipe, an algorithm, something that tells you tells to a computer exactly how to take the input and transform it into a specific output. So that's the abstract way to see what a function is. More to the point is that functions really are a type of knowledge. because functions are knowledge about this fairly that really squarely fall into the vision of the Wikimedia movement. It's something we should be dealing with. And the functions are not just, knowledge in the first thing, they're actually knowledge generators. You can come with completely new questions to a function and can get an answer for it. Even though no one in the world has ever asked this question, a function might be able to answer your question. So functions are a very powerful way of representing knowledge and of answering questions. So, and the big tech companies know that, and they already made a lot of functions available to you. So for example, if you take Siri and ask it how many teaspoons in 2 tablespoons, well, in the back end, it has a function that takes this question, understands it, and then applies some calculation that tells you that, well, 2 tablespoons are 6 teaspoons. So that there's a function going on, giving you the answer. Or for example, if I go to Bing and type in, how old is the governor of Andhra Pradesh? Well, Bing, even though it's a search engine, doesn't search the web at that point and looks for documents talking about the current age of the governor, and then gives you this number. What it does is it tries to understand the question. It has a knowledge graph embedded, which may be built from content on the web, and then uses a function that, based on his birthday, based on the fact that it knows, well, who is the governor of Andhra Pradesh, and then based on the birthday of that person, calculates you the current age. And if you have asked the same question in July, well, you would have get 85 years old, because it actually calculated a function for you at that point. So it's not that it has to just wait until the web catches up with new documents speaking about the age of him. No, well, all you need is to know the birthday and then apply a function right there in this moment. Or for example, one of my favorite experiences of functions, if you go to Google and ask for the volume of a pyramid, you get this beautiful experience where you can enter the relevant variables immediately. It displays you what are you entering right now in the visualization, and it provides you a solution with a formula, and it substitutes your values into the formula and calculates you the eventual result. So here we have a very, very straightforward and beautiful experience of a function. But the thing is, if this is because all of these companies decided on the set of functions to make available to you, and then to put a team with a PM, to put a team of software engineers to actually code this up and provide you those experiences. And those experiences are great. I don't misunderstand it. But running these functions is actually a superpower. And I want to democratize the superpower. I wanted to make everyone be able to contribute new functions and to use more of those functions. And this is really the goal that we are aiming for with the Wiki of Functions. So this is just a mock-up how it could look like, for example. So we have a library of functions. You can call the function of a day. The functions are sorted by different ways. Let's look at a few very simple functions. So for example, we had earlier the tablespoon to teaspoon. Okay. So imagine that there's a page in the wiki which converts tablespoons to teaspoons. So we have some description of the function. We have the argument, which is a tablespoon quantity, and returns a teaspoon quantity. And then we have several different implementations in different languages. We have tests for those, and we can see how those result. And down there we have the form where you can immediately enter a number and calculate it yourself. So you can just go and use those functions immediately. Now, convert is a very simple example. You can easily imagine much more complex examples, like, for example, take a picture and create me a color histogram, a list of pairs of color and how often this color appears in that given picture. So we could take a picture from Commons and create those color histograms on the fly in the wiki. Or here in Area, we take a geoshape, for example, as it's also available in Commons, and it calculates you how large the area of this geoshape is. And you could imagine, for example, immediately to connect this with Wikidata, take take a geographical location that has GeoShape connected to it and compare what the GeoShape is covering with, for example, the area as it explicitly given in Wikidata, or do any other calculations based on the GeoShape, like merging GeoShapes or seeing what the overlap is, and so on and so on. There's a lot of things you can do with functions here. On one here, this is very heavily knowledge-based. This one takes two taxons, for example. It takes a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus, and it figures out if those two taxons have been living at the same time or not. And this is based, obviously, on the Wikidata knowledge base, where we have all the information about when the taxons have lived, and now we can see and compare them and answer, yes, they have lived at the same time, or no, or actually we don't know, we don't have enough information. So these are just some examples of possible functions that you can use, and many of those would become available to you. I mean, it's up to the community which functions you want to have in this big library of functions, but this is the nice thing, it's really up to the community. Let's dive a little bit deeper into one specific example. So multiplication. Multiplication, as defined here, takes two positive integers and returns a positive integers. Obviously, there are other definitions of multiplication too, where you take, for example, more comprehensive numbers like complex numbers or others. So, as I said, the wiki is multilingual in terms of programming languages. So the multiply function, as defined here, actually has several different implementations. One in JavaScript, and in that case, it just takes, the native multiplication operator from JavaScript and returns the result of that. Or in Scheme, where it also can, just has a different syntax. So you can have different implementations of the whole thing used in different programming languages. Or in something that we call composition. Composition is interesting. It's not a fancy new programming language that you haven't heard about yet, but rather it just takes the functions that the wiki already has and composes them together to achieve the same result. And in this case, it's not particularly efficient, obviously, to do that. But basically, here it implements multiplication through recursion in the form that it takes the if function, the is0 function, the add function, the subtract function, and then recursively calls the multiply function. In this way, it calculates the results of multiplication. And this is interesting because it's built completely within the wiki of functions. So for example, if you're actually missing the multiplication implementation in the programming language that you want to use, you can actually create that if you have those other more basic implementations available, and you can pull them together and still run the function in the programming language, even though you don't have it. And you can imagine building this higher and higher. So you can have pretty complex functions, and you don't have to have implementations in every single programming language, but you can actually break them down into just function calls and then somewhere grounded in actual implementation. I'm not talking about the efficiency of the whole thing, but it should be effective in producing results. And the other interesting thing is, as I said, it's also multilingual in terms of natural languages. So what you see here can be completely represented, for example, in Bengali. And even the implementation itself would be available in Bengali because the functions are just pages with set IDs inside of the new wiki of functions. So here we can use the multiplication again in the recursive call in Bengali. We can use the other functions that we're calling in Bengali, and we don't have to know basic English anymore in order to understand and provide implementations for functions anymore. But this would be available in as many languages as Wikidata is. So you can actually go and see the implementations in the composition view across different languages. Thanks for Mahi for helping with the translation of this last minute yesterday. So what we are building with this Wikipedia of functions, with this new wiki project, which is really the new wiki project which we are starting next year, hopefully, is we want to create a new community, bringing people who haven't been contributing to the Wikimedia movement projects before. We want to allow people to write implementations, to read implementations without having to know basic English, which just been identified as a major blocking point for a lot of people to actually have access to code, to have access to functions. We want to allow many more people to access functions from many different modalities and gateways. We will provide all this implementation. Everyone can call them, can use them, and evaluate them within their context and run them, so that a lot of people will have access to this vast, large library of functions. And all of this leading to basically a system that allows us to generate multilingual content, which is the original motivation, to generate multilingual content from abstract representations created with constructors which are also just functions in the wiki of functions, and where the renderers are just functions in the wiki of functions. So all of these we are learning with the Wikipedia of functions, with this new wiki of functions, we are learning the steps towards building this large natural language generation library that will help us with getting to the goal of the abstract Wikipedia. And it is a little bit of a stretch, you know, to go from a function that turns tablespoons into teaspoons to something that takes the only person dead constructor and translates it into 300 different languages. But this is exactly what we need to learn about. How can we create these pages? How can we maintain these pages as a community? What kind of software support is required? How can we make these things available to many people in many different languages? All of these we want to learn with those simple functions first, and then building out this library. Our plan is to, in the next year, 2021, to really focus completely on the new wiki of functions, to launch the wiki, to see what the community needs, to see what is needed to make the wiki work, to have the functions be browsable, to be understandable, to be executable, etc. And then in 2022, we add a second focus. So we will always continue to work on this new wiki projects or functions. But in 2022, we want to add a second focus on the abstract Wikipedia plan, on creating abstract content, on creating the renderers to translate it in many languages, on pushing Wikidata to support abstract content, to support more lexicographical data, and then the whole thing, finally, to be in 2023, to be able to take the generated content and use them in the Wikipedias who want to do so, in order to cover the knowledge gaps with some form of baseline knowledge that is coming from the abstract Wikipedia project, so that in 2023 we really have more people share in more knowledge in more languages, and that we are really a very substantial step closer to a world where everyone can share in the sum of our knowledge. Thank you for your attention. My understanding is we have still plenty of time for questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Denny. We will now take questions. We have 4 questions in the Google Meet chat. I will request people who are asking questions to ask themselves, and Denny will be there to answer them. So first, Husmeddin Turki, please, there are 3 questions from you. So if you can speak out and ask the questions. And he left. Yeah. So yeah, he's back again. Yeah.
Okay. So hello. Well, my first question is, well, you have shared with us an example about width and height. In fact, I think that the length should be superior to width. If actually this is the convention in French mathematics, and so Is there any kind of constraints in functions that can substitute the values of two variables if they were, for example, mixed together or a bit confused of each other?
So you're talking about implementation for calculating the volume of a pyramid in Google, right? But basically we would have, I guess, at some point a similar function that takes the length, the width, and the height, and then calculates the volume from that. The names of those will be in the wiki of functions, will be as, if I have an example. So the names of those, as you see, for example, the multiplication will be translatable just as they are in Wikidata right now. So it doesn't have to be depth and width and height and so on. You can use you can use the names that are appropriate for your language. And if you have a very different conceptualization of the thing, if you, for example, calculate the result of what the depth of a pyramid, not based on depth, width, and height, but on other dimensions, which result in the same thing, which is obviously very possible with function calls. You can just create a second function that takes this different set of arguments and returns the results. So you're not limited to have a single function for the same idea if you have different arguments that can be used. So you can just have both of them be represented next to each other and maybe share some of the tests with appropriate transformers and so on, and compare the results of the different implementations of those. So different conceptualizations should be able to be covered in the wiki of functions, even if you have then different functions for those.
Okay, so my second question is about linking the variables and functions to Wikidata items. Well, the multiplicand, for example, here, and the multiplier, has a corresponding Wikidata item in Wikidata.
Yeah.
So is there by any means a trial to make the arguments linked to Wikidata items and the functions as well?
Yeah, there should be. We haven't figured it out yet. So I agree with you that it seems that sometimes those would make a lot of sense, and somehow connecting to it would feel very natural. We haven't figured it out yet, really, and you're very welcome to come to our mailing list, to come to our wiki pages and make suggestions on how exactly those mappings could look like, should look like. For now, my plan is basically, let's start without the mapping. Let's start building a small library of functions, and then we will see how the mapping could look like. We'll figure out the ways that these connections should be looking like without constraining the original growth and allowing the wiki functions to grow into the space they need to be by themselves. And then we will find later the ways to map the functions, to map the arguments to the respective Wikidata items. In short, I don't know what the answer to that will be. It seems very obvious that this would be a very useful thing to have. We don't have an answer for that one yet.
I have a third question, but I forgot it, I think, just because I shut down.
Should I call on for the next question, or will the moderator do that?
Yeah, so I have posted the 3 questions of Kumadin, and I hope you can remember the second now.
Yeah, that's it. So my third question is about if the function will be assigned kind of attributes. For example, as you know, in mathematics, functions are having some attributes. For example, a concave versus convex function. For example, symmetric versus asymmetric functions. For example, the multiplication here is a symmetric function that when we mix up the multiplicand with the multiplier, we will have the similar result, etc., etc. So is there any kind of doing kind of Wikidata-like description for functions?
Right. That's a great question. And I think it goes hand in hand with your previous question. So basically, I would expect that things like multiplication and so on are already assigned in Wikidata. For example, the fact that the multiplication is that the arguments of multiplication can change so that it's associative, that and similar things. So this information is already there in Wikidata. And one question is like, should we double the information inside of the wiki of functions, or should we actually rely on having a mapping that you discussed in your previous question, and then have the structured information in Wikidata? Because in Wikidata we already know how to deal with the growth of the vocabulary, with maintaining this kind of data, and so on. And instead of reinventing the whole thing inside of the wiki of functions, we could kind of outsource this kind of knowledge about the functions to Wikidata and have there the metadata about the functions be stored. Having said that, the actual function model is also part of the wiki. So if the community actually wants it, they can even go into the wiki of functions and have and make the function model represent those things. But as I said, I wonder how useful is it to have in the different places. And I would expect basically the community to have this discussion at some point after the launch of the wiki to figure out what's the best way to actually store this kind of information. So should we have it in one place in Wikidata? Should we have to repeat it in the wiki of functions? How will this work? How will these things be connected? I don't know yet. We will see. It's really up to the future community of the two projects to figure out how this kind of thing will be represented. I definitely agree with you that it should be represented somewhere, because it makes it gives very useful knowledge that we can then use for more testing, for more consistency checks, and so on. I just don't know yet what the best place will be to actually store and maintain this kind of knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Yep. The next question is from Ranjit. Ranjit, can you speak up and or I can?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, I think I remember that in 2018 Wikimania there was a discussion that generating an article or generating a paragraph from Wikidata using some kind of intermediary process. I hope that there was a discussion. And personally speaking, we had tried some kind of thing from a set of CSV we generate, because like for a list of geographical location, if you have a set of values, then you can generate an article using a template or something like that. But actually the problem, if it go multilingual, actual problem is there we need a language processor in between to translate these variables into multiple languages. And yeah, on Latin languages, I think the whole structure is already available there. But for Indic or other Asian languages, that thing is not much there. So how we are going to address that problem? Because without that thing, we can't have a meaningful paragraph or something like that from Wikidata.
Absolutely. Yes, as I said during the presentation, I was hand-waving a lot during the actual natural generation processes. And you're completely right. I mean, the thing is that English is a particularly easy language to generate, because it's a highly isolated language. You don't have to deal a lot with agreement and other things, whereas most other languages don't have the same feature. for many other languages, you need to make sure that your verb and your subject are in agreement with each other, that the number of the of your subject and so on have reflect on the verb, and many other things. So yes, you're completely right. Basically, the render functions have to know all this grammatical knowledge. They have to know how to which parts of a text to generate has to agree with which other parts, and how to actually make those things. And this has all to be implemented in the Wikio functions. And there's already prototype implementation for this that does quite a lot of agreement and shows that it can work for German, which is a bit more complicated than English, not as complicated as many other languages, but still it shows that things like these can actually work out in the given framework. But we need someone to implement it, and you're completely right. Having a well-described grammar that is actually correct about a language is super helpful with creating those functions, because people won't be starting to discussing how this will work out and so on. And I am aware that for many languages, those are not necessarily readily available at all, or even correct. They might be described through which happens more often than it's good. They might be described by some European linguist looking at it from a Latin lens, trying to fit it all into the case system of Latin, and not really capturing the how the language is working and so on. So my hope is that the respective language communities, and those don't need to be big, right? I expect that, like, 5 to 15 people can actually create the set of renderers and supporting functions for the renders, that they will hopefully work on how to render those sentences. And sometimes we might discover that what we think of as a single language is not necessarily actually a single language, or it has sufficiently big divergences that it might make sense to actually split it up into more specific languages that can reuse common parts, but then can have different parts for specific constructors or for specific pieces of the language to be represented. So I expect that this will be a very interesting endeavor, but in the end we will have a publicly visible, editable, and maintained library of natural language generation functions, where this kind of grammatical knowledge is encoded in a very explicit way. And I see that there are potential for a lot of discussions, but in the end, the results are visible, can be tested for, can be expressed. So we can start writing the tests before we write the implementations. And if we don't agree on the tests, for example, if we don't agree on what the result should be, we can find ways to actually diverge those two from each other and to figure out this. But basically, yes, you're right. We will have to go through the very painful and difficult process of encoding the grammatical knowledge that is required to generate those languages inside of the new Wikio functions, which is one reason why I think that the only way this can work is by actually outsourcing it to a community, and not by trying to do that in a small development team in anywhere, working one language after the other. But this has to be something that is really fully owned by the respective communities. I don't want more European linguists come in and push Latin terms on the way that languages are represented. Thank you for this very important question.
Next question is from Jihan. Jihan, if you...
All right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I heard you talk a number of times, Denny, and my imagination is running wild. So this one is a little bit farther in the future. And imagine we already have the things in place to actually generate content working. And then you can imagine we have a lot of concepts that are similar. So you could have a function to create a basic biography, and immediately we have biographies in all languages. But then, of course, you could also do the same, like a function for rendering a scientific article or an astronomical object. Will we have like language projects, Wikipedias, with tens of millions of scientific articles in them? Or should we have some sort of blocking them? Or I don't know. Will they be overpopulated by things that haven't formerly not been notable?
Right. That's a good question. So in the end, it's up to the communities. They should be able to do that. What I would like to see, and this is just my personal preference, and it's something that we have to negotiate with the communities further down the road when we get closer to those things. What I would like to see is, for example, for us to move away from the number of articles as being a major metric for the health of a Wikipedia to something like, for example, the number of active editors. Therefore, to reduce the incentive to game and create a lot of articles just to be like number one in terms of number of articles or whatever. So we could imagine, for example, that if we have 15 million or 20 million articles about scientific papers, that those are there, but that those are counted differently, that those are being surfaced differently, that they are not as visible as manual created content. In the end, I expect still that every Wikipedia will have manually created content, because what we can do with Abstract Wikipedia will for a long time, if ever, not get close to what you can do when you write those articles manually. And the actual manually written content in a specific Wikipedia language will always should be surfaced much more visibly, should be much more available to the community, because this is in many cases this will be better content, this will be more interesting content, this will be more locally appropriate content, and so on. So yes, those 10 or 20 million articles about scientific papers would be there, or those 5 million articles about astronomical objects, they should be there somehow, they should be available in the Wikipedia, but they shouldn't be drowning out the actual community work that the community is doing. It should be kind of like background knowledge that is there if someone actually goes and searches for it explicitly, or if someone clicks through it or browses through it and so on. It should be available, but it shouldn't drown out the actual content that the local community is writing. The local community should be having means that make their own activity very visible, that make their own article of work very visible. So it would be, for example, terrible if the recent changes of a Wikipedia like Swedish or Bengali would be completely drowned out by edits on Abstract Wikipedia, and they don't even see anymore what is going on in the local project. We need to negotiate and figure out how to actually make these metrics available, how to make the right visibilities for these contents, in order to make those things work together in the way that is most useful for the readers, and it is most useful for the communities to still have a good growth. It might mean, for example, that in some Wikipedias where there is a lot of content that is, for example, generated by bots in a very schematic way, in a very template way, that we should maybe get rid of this content and replace it with something based on Abstract Wikipedia, which is then maintainable by the whole community and doesn't have a buzz factor of 1. It's not a single person who is actually capable of making changes to those articles and running the bots and doing these things, but rather that it can maintain collaboratively and can be used together with me, and that the community has a real say in how much of this content they want to have inside of the wiki and how it should be displayed, how it should be integrated into contents and so on. So I hope that we can actually improve the current situation a lot by providing the right tools to add this kind of baseline knowledge to the Wikipedias without drowning out the local work, the local contributions, and the local content. I hope that makes any sense. Thank you for this really good question.
Jan wants to follow up, so yeah.
No, you answered it in the end, because I was going to say we need some sort of tools for that, because already in Wikidata things are drowning out. We imported a lot of parliamentary motions recently in Swedish, and now when I search for sustainable development, I get, and those are actually, since they had good data, they are better linked, so they rank higher in the in the search than the item for sustainable development.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, but yeah, I like your answer. It resonated a lot with me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Next question is from Subodh. Subodh's internet is not working very good, so he can't speak. So I will just read his question. His first question is, what will be the format of the citations or reference section?
I have no idea yet. This will be created by the community. The community will be creating renderers for citations and the reference section. There might be even different functions, different renderers, depending on different depending on differences in the different Wikipedias. So there's actually no requirement that, you know, every Wikipedia uses the same formatter for citations and references. They can have, they can share them, they can have the individual ones. And in the end, I expect that, you know, they would take the data from Wikidata, which already has a lot of bibliographical data in there. And the Wikisite event is happening, I think, just next week or something like that, very soon, where they're working on having even more bibliographic data. So I would expect that the actual bibliographic data is represented in Wikidata, and then you have function calls in the new wiki or functions that will take this data and format it in the appropriate way. An appropriate way can mean different things for different languages. It can even mean different things for different domains in different languages. So whatever is appropriate for a jazz musician might not be appropriate for a Roman emperor, for example. And so you have, you can have a number of functions that you are maintaining in the Wikio functions that can then be used by the different language editions, and that can be used also even for, you know, shared abstract content. It can then decide, depending on the language, which path to go in order to represent a specific citation or reference in a specific language. So there are opportunities to share and unify those citations and references. But there still will be the ability to retain control in your own language, how you actually want to have it in your language. And there's, in the end, always the possibility to just overwrite it locally. But in the end, this is all something that the community will decide. It won't be the Wikimedia Foundation and free developers sitting in some room or in some chat room these days and deciding on how this will happen. This is all will be completely done by the community, both how those references will be formatted and also to which articles, to which individual references those will apply. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Danny. The second question from Subodh is, yeah, we need to mobilize tech and linguistic community to gear up for this project. What kind of profiles are you looking for? Any thoughts on capacity building programs in India? First challenge is to prepare material explaining these concepts and process in Indian languages.
Yes, those are very good points. So we're not there yet to actually start properly this call for building this the linguistic corpora to build the to capture the linguistic knowledge. So it's right now it would be a bit premature because it would just, I mean, it's all just vaporware, it's just slideware. I mean, what you've seen are basically a few slides. We are starting writing with implementation, but we're far away from the point where we can take grammatical knowledge in, and we won't be there in 2021. We will be there hopefully, if everything goes well, in 2022. So yes, to the premise of the question, we will need to build capacity. I think right now it's a little bit premature. We will get to this probably during the next year, maybe the year after that, and then start to have programs. So we definitely plan to have capacity programs inside of the local communities. So we don't want to we don't want to be to have external people describing how a specific language is being rendered or so on. We want this to be done by local communities. We want to give the capability to how a language works to the people who actually speak that language natively, and not and make sure that this right now what could be done is actually to build on lexicographical knowledge in Wikidata. There are still some issues with that. We want to start tackling those as well, because this is also a form of capacity building that we need to do in the end. Right now, for example, I'm doing some analysis, taking the Wikipedia corpus and seeing how much of it is already available as in the lexicographical data, how much coverage do we have currently. I'd like to somehow publish that and to use this as a guidance of where do we need more lexicographic knowledge in Wikidata and so on. So the lexicographical knowledge in Wikidata is right now something that people could already start working on. But in the end, those pieces will all come together only in a year or two. And one thing that I noticed, it's super hard to talk about these things in the abstract, and also things might change in the meantime when they actually hit reality, when they hit the implementation. So planning too much of these things in advance is not always very helpful. So I will definitely get to all the capacity building work, to all the outreach to local communities in order to get the linguistic grammatical knowledge into the system. It's just that right now it feels a little bit premature to start doing that. But yeah, everyone who wants to be ready for that, I'm super happy to basically put to inform you when we get to it, and to keep updates on the timelines and so on, so that we can actually work on this together when the right time comes.
Thanks, Danny. I hope that answers your question, Subodh. So Subodh has sent me a private message that one participant, Vidula Tikar, wants to speak. She is a linguist and she wants to speak right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Vidula, if you want to speak, you can speak now.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I'm Vidula. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. So we have the built-up capacity in Indian languages, and we will be very happy to contribute our bit in the whole project where language expertise is required. So please count us in the project and let us contribute, because in Indian languages have a specific sentence structure, or how the verbs behave, how the nouns, I mean, they're very different from European languages. So in localizing that content in Indian languages or vice versa, I think we would be happy to help.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear. I'm super happy to have you on board and to work together with you to make this happen.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Vidula. If any of you have some other questions or comments, please do so. I guess there are no more questions. So thanks, Denny. It was like I've attended your previous sessions too, so it is already always enchanting to hear from you. And tomorrow we'll have our next session on Wikidata Lexeme. So the area where we need to prepare for abstract Wikipedia, and that will be taken by Mahir Murset. He's here. So if Mahir wants to speak about tomorrow's session in brief, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So the session will start initially by just going through what lexemes are from a high-level standpoint and how they're implemented in Wikidata, talking about the individual parts that go into individual lexemes, how they can be connected to other parts of the Wikimedia universe, you know, like with commons, with Wikidata items, and conceivably in the future with Wiktionary and the abstract Wikipedia. And then afterwards, we'll break and have a little workshop-ish session where we talk about creating lexemes, expanding them, making them useful in other places. So that's basically the structure of the session tomorrow in brief. Same time, same place, I guess.
Thanks, Mahir. I hope some of you will join tomorrow also. So Denny, where can you find the link of the presentation? Is it somewhere in the Google Drive or anywhere?
Oh, I didn't actually put it anywhere yet. I will put the link to the presentation into the Etherpad right after this, right after the end of the session.
That would be great. Thanks. So, any more comments? Yeah. Thank you, Denny. Thank you, Denny. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you for being here and listening for me rambling on for 1.5 hours. Thanks, everyone. This was really a great opportunity to spread the word. And thank you for your very interesting questions. I will take them with me. And I learned quite a bit from that. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Denny. So we are up for today and we'll meet tomorrow. Bye.